Eu sou o Bruno Tiberi e todas as manhãs você confere aqui o TVC Manhã com as principais informações do trânsito e, claro, tudo aquilo que vai impactar você no seu dia. Então não se esqueça, hein? De segunda a sexta eu espero você.
Eu sou Brenner Vasconcelos e aqui comigo no TVC Esporte você confere todas as atualizações e informações do esporte do Brasil e do mundo. Eu espero você.
Sou a Isis Tainá e apresento a Agenda Cultural. Aqui você fica por dentro das melhores opções de lazer, música, teatro e diversão para toda a família.
Alguns dos maiores nomes e personalidades do design brasileiro estarão em Brasília para uma série de encontros, palestras e debates, nos dias 10 a 13 de março, no II Fórum Cidades Criativas do Design. O objetivo é discutir o papel do design como uma poderosa ferramenta de inovação, desenvolvimento e transformação social. Brasília, Curitiba e Fortaleza integram a Rede Brasileira de Cidades Criativas do Design da UNESCO, um reconhecimento internacional para cidades que colocam a criatividade no centro do desenvolvimento urbano, econômico e social. Venha fazer parte desse movimento. As vagas são limitadas. Saiba mais e se inscreva em nossas redes.
A palavra pode levantar um país ou afundar uma reputação. Pode inflamar uma multidão ou calar uma verdade, mas também pode trazer memórias, sonhos e contar a história. Seja impressa em papel ou formada por pixels, a palavra pode confundir ou pode revelar. Em um mundo com tanto ruído, a palavra certa faz toda a diferença. Acompanhe o Correio também nos meios digitais. Correio Brasiliense. Jornalismo de verdade.
Eu sou o Bruno Tiberi e todas as manhãs você confere aqui o TVC Manhã com as principais informações do trânsito e, claro, tudo aquilo que vai impactar você no seu dia. Então não se esqueça, hein? De segunda a sexta eu espero você.
Eu sou Brenner Vasconcelos e aqui comigo no TVC Esporte você confere todas as atualizações e informações do esporte do Brasil,
de lazer, música, teatro e diversão para toda a família.
Alguns dos maiores nomes e personalidades do design brasileiro estarão em Brasília para uma série de encontros, parlamento de inovação, desenvolvimento e transformação social. Brasília, Curitiba e Fortaleza integram a Rede Brasileira de Cidades Criativas do Design da UNESCO, um reconhecimento internacional para cidades que colocam a criatividade no centro do desenvolvimento urbano, econômico e social. Venha fazer parte desse movimento. As vagas são limitadas. Saiba mais e se inscreva em nossas redes.
Cities of design, with the participation of Brasília, Curitiba, and Fortaleza, and other invitees from all over Brazil. We are sat here today in our third day of the event. It seems like a month already. This is the third day of work, and we were here in the first day. In the second day, we were at the university. On the afternoon, we were at the Deputy's Camera, and today we are here at the University, Catholic University of Brasília. I would like to thank Professor Leandro and give him a welcome, and also thanks the university, which was also our partner in the forum of the first forum of Creative Cities of Design. Before that, before calling the panelists, I would like to pass the floor for Leandro so he can welcome us. Thank you so much, Leandro. Thank you, Marcos. Welcome, everyone. Good morning. It is very symbolic that the forum will have this trajectory that, gathers the university, the productive sector, public sector, private sector. I think it is quite symbolic that we are trying to gather our forces for the creative economy. In my destiny for 2 or 3 years ago, the first time I thought about this, which is, what do we do with what we know and with the experience that we have acquired? It is obvious that this question has begun with me. What do I do with all of the faculty? And each time that I begin to think about this, I create myself as a challenge. And unfortunately, I only thought about this once I retired. But you're still active. Please think about this today. Because the ability that we have of changing the lives of people, their heads, the way of thinking and the way of acting in any profession that we are in, it is extraordinary. I have worked in the last years a lot with total quality management. It actually began in 1992, which was a work that I was actually first, marketing and branding a program, and then I had some consultancies in companies, etc., etc. I visited lots of companies. What I want to say? I had an opportunity that I had created back in the time. Once we are talking about creative economy, our head is creating things all the time. And I thought, what this has to do with equality? And then he said, no, we have learned here that the entire time that we have to work collectively, that we have to do things all together. I do this also at home because I didn't do this before. Who has implemented the system inside the theater could have never imagined. Who has implemented the system inside the theater could have never imagined that they would change the relationships between man and wife inside a home, a household. Another one raised his hand and said, no, I get home now. And then I look at what my kid is doing at school. And then I said, what this has to do with equality? And then he said, don't you see how many seminars and studies that we had here inside the company? Knowledge for us of things that we now know how things work. This was very important. So I go home now and ask, or with other activities. They are creating and perpetuating, in many cases, something that we, as humans, miss a lot, which is solidarity. When you begin to work about, with the design on a strict census design, let's talk about today's topic. Have you ever thought about what it means to see an image? Ricardo, you can also do anything you can, just correct me if I'm wrong. But if you get touched by that image, that person's changed. That person thinks about things that they would never think before. They would say, for example, that one of the main images that brought the end of Vietnam War was that young girls that was running around, with napalm, burnt with napalm. So this impact that we have is something which is absolutely extraordinary. In COVID, she was working at the hospital. She has lived and co-lived with the worst side that are sickened people and said, my life became the UCI. She passed for the first worst months, and then because of the destiny, she and Marcus ended up with COVID. After that, she has worked for 9 months with all the necessary care, trying not to transmit the disease. I was living at 213 Sul. I consider myself from Brasilia now. I was born in Minas, but the majority of my part is in Brasilia. And I was alone in my household. I stayed there. I had a maid. And then I asked her, what will I do? The second question that I had was the following one. How will Brazil and the world look like after pandemics? Well, I began to read everything that I could about alternative models, about things that could happen. I would see any amount of Zooms that were available, treating about topics that I was interested in. And in that moment, I learned something. To me, COVID was positive. Even though it was very tragic for everyone that I had, and especially for those who had, familiars that died during the pandemics. But this obligation of having to stay in a place and to find things I could explain to myself, not only the present but the future, was for me, was very good. It was a good experience. And what did I learn back in that moment? We, as an economist, we have this tendency of permanently thinking about complex models filled with equations, and now that we have AI, it's even easier to invent things and blah blah blah. But we have this initial premise that the economy is a decision that the government makes, and we as citizens, the poor population, we feel the impact of any decision that the government will have or will make. So where could I find a solution for all of this? A woman named Katie Minsworth or something like this, that has a doctorate in Oxford in England, she's from England, she posed the same question for herself, but with a competency that I did not have, and she has designed a new model. She designed a new model. No, forget about Keynes, forget about the great, economy, big things that are all around. But she began to think differently. And what did she propose? And she's trying to execute, and it has to do with this event. Propose that we should imagine ourselves as, in 1/3 of her work, which is called donut economy. I'm not going to give you details of this development. I really suggest you to read about it because it is quite interesting, donut economy. And the thing is that each time that we are here, we that live inside the donut, we want to do something, we need to ask ourselves the following: what am I doing? What I'm doing, does it help people, or does it interrupts the people which are in the middle, which are these people? Second question, every decision that I'm making, it doesn't matter if it's in my personal life, in my company's life, how do these decisions affect the environment? Do they help with preservation, or do they help with to destroy it even a little bit more? So what is the most important matter that I would like to highlight with this way of thinking? People. Point. That's it. We are all people. That's it. The CEO of a company is a person, the board, the head director is a person, the creative officials are people. What we are doing affects people. So the concept of people, of a person, of being, the processes being people-centered was a brutal change. Revenue, yes, of course we have to have it, because without revenues, companies will have to break. They break down. But if we don't take care of what we are doing and the way that our actions affect people's lives and the life of the planet, we are doing, setbacks. We are working backwards. Even with matters just like, having the government, the market, or the companies, the private sector that are all, thinking about, the prices of the market, and civil society. The three of them together. And what is civil society? First of things that we think about that is even more relevant for everybody who's here today. Associations of class, associations. This is not about, specific companies or people. No. The great question is, how do these associations can help us to face challenges and look for solutions? Ricardo told me, because unfortunately I was not able to be there yesterday, but he talked about what the design association where he was a president made with the different floods that happened in Porto Alegre. So to sit around and talk about the different, models of furnitures, of things that people could help out after the floods so that they could substitute the furniture that were destroyed, and to create something which was quite obvious. But it wasn't obvious before, but it's not before, but it is now obvious. So they have created a model for, a squeegee. That is something so simple, but you can see how having some sort of trade union of civil society can make. So, but when you're only focusing on urban centers, which is our topic here today, I have an amazing example of Athens in Greece. They had this moment of a serious financial crisis that was very strong in Greece, because they had huge debts, huge debts, and they had no conditions of having any sort of loans, and they were in a crisis. But they gathered a lot of people from Athens, and they said, okay, so we have a problem here. We need medical assistance. We need medical assistance. And then they said, okay, let's see what we can do. So they gathered a group of civil society from Athens, and then they began to think about, okay, so what sort of contribution can we do? We can do volunteer work, because we had some physicians, we have nurses, they had no assistants that could help out. Okay, but if we get to the conclusion that we need, because if there's a serious flu problem, for example, I don't even want to talk about some other diseases, what do? Oh, we need to have medicine. We need to have equipment to, make exams. So we need to have tools, instruments. So what did they looked for about it? They looked for partnerships with companies that produced this sort of things. So they had these partnerships with the market. They collected many things, and then the project began to get bigger. Okay, but now we need to have a space, because sometimes there's people who need to to rest, or they have to stay in a place so that we can look actually for the competence. Brutal, because we're also talking about transferences of money. Because we're also talking about transferences of money for different municipalities and states. So we pay here in Brasilia, and then we go into the federal government. This money goes into the federal government, that it's then divided into other states, and then it comes back to the federal district. Wouldn't it be way more simple just to create a situation indeed of a federal Republic of Brazil, where you can collect money and send this directly to things? Of course, that this money could be at a national, no special place, but the focus should it's the state, and the state cannot do everything. Brazil has more than 7,000 municipalities. Minas Gerais have 580 cities. Do you think that the state is able to take care of everyone, of everything? Of course not. Where do things happen? At the municipalities. And why shouldn't we be working with the cities? In theory and in practice, that comes from donut economy. We here from Brazil, we have forgotten about that we live in cities. We live in cities. And with what we already know, that we have experienced, that we're able to create as new tools, they could all be transferred to municipalities. I'm going to give you an example. In my dreams, I always use the dreams of ending off with the pollution from Baía de Guanabara, thinking about quality management, total quality management. And I thought the following: there's a tool named sequester that it means you organize, then separate residues, garbage, and improve the quality of our area inside the companies. And then I thought, what is would could do this in rivers that end up, flowing to the Bay of Guanabara Bay, so they could, show the people who are living at the margins, at the sides of the river, they should not, place garbages in the river. They shouldn't be, throwing any sort of garbages or refrigerator or old beds, because when goes into the river, it ends up going to the bay. So with time, they made this here in São Sebastião, here in Brasília. There's someone that I respect. They already did this in here in São Sebastião. A few years ago, they made this here in São Sebastião, here in Brasília. Does it improve the life quality of people? Maybe it's not one thing or another, it's okay. But if you are doing any sort of activity or action when it becomes clear that it is affecting and harming the lives of people, for God's sake, do not do them. Do not enter the game of, oh, my boss said so. The responsibility is not only of the boss, it's also yours. So please try to convince your boss of not to do these things, If your boss is not able to do this, I am very radical about this. We have our own values and principles, and we cannot work in places that, hurts our principles and values. Fire yourself and go and try to do something else in your life that will bring you pleasure and that will fill you with pride, something that you love to do, and where you do not have to face people that are all around you that think in a very bad way. This is also our accountability. Because we have a youth here in front of me, everybody gets a bit shocked with Z generation, Gen Z, which is actually wonderful because they value what? Freedom, seriousness, respect. And they are creating, no, they're doing changes, they're changing our society and our company's world, which is quite genius because it's no longer the company that chooses the employees, it's the employee that chooses the company. And this youth has a good mindset and good head. I'm not going to work at a place. We know with an authoritarian boss, or with a boss that when they make a mistake, no, this, no, they scream with the employees, etc. No, they're thinking about what types of bosses they want. They want a very well educated and sympathetic bosses that will smile and say, hey, did you do this like this? But okay, but let's try it out in another way. Can we do it in a different way? Maybe we can find a different path. Maybe we can find a different solution? Can't we improve the results instead of improving 5%? Try to improve 30%. They explain, they guide, they show where they can learn more. They're showing to the employees in alternative ways, but they are showing this in a way which is human, educated, and respectful, and contributing to value their employees. This is the world that we are building today, the world that we want, at least the world that I want. I want a world where here from 50 years, there's no one discussing and saying what I need to say here right now, because we have already evolved and it has already worked out. Someone is controlling my time, because if you let me, I will speak forever. So please, Marcos or someone, signal to me if I need to stop, okay? Please, please signal. Oh, I'm so sorry, there was a TV in here. I have 1 minute, okay. Oof. I got surprised right now. So let me speak something that Ricardo insisted for me to say to you. My life experience was in the public sector, and it was because of my passion. It was because of my passion. Before coming here, before retiring, I worked in IPEA. I was dealing with research. I was giving class at university. I have a great respect and love for the academic life. Seeing Professor Leandro must be here. I really love and respect the academic life, but it's not my life. I like doing things, practically. And I could do this in the public sector. So I changed into Brasilia. I moved to Brasilia in 1980s. And I will not live here, okay? So in this trajectory that I had in the public sector, some things became clear. One of them, I spoke about it already. This is one of the things that I have a great joy to share with you. I got into Apex in 89. There were 20 projects. I left in the end of 2002 with 200 projects involving companies, low and medium and micro companies that deal with the Brazilian exports, and people didn't have any idea of what this meant. They had no idea. No, entrepreneurs from São Paulo, they went for the airport of Guarulhos to be able to go to 4 islands to go to a ferry. Once they went to do this check-in, they asked for our passport and it said, oh, do I need to have this? And it is our responsibility to tell people what they need. For those who don't know, maybe sometimes there's an ignorant. Maybe sometimes people, say, "Oh, that person is not ignorant," but in the strict senses, that person, is ignoring knowledge. They don't know about things. So, those of us who know about the things, we have this obligation of guiding, of teaching, of telling things. PECs, they worked a lot with this, and I'm also one of the people that had to do this, that each export project they had to have a specific item named design. People from Brazil, they were going to foreign lands and they didn't have a brand of the products. So we had an entire program that even became a book later that we have launched in, I believe, in 8 or 10, different languages. I even have, white Chinese and Russian, editions. I forgot about my Portuguese version. I don't really know where it is right now. But branding. We thought about back in the time a branding for Brazil, which is a specific flag, as if it was flying. And then we had this brand of different sectors because our partnerships was with trade unions. So with BEAT, which was the textile sector back in the day, and it is still nowadays, you can see the clothing branding. And we worked with different companies that were there, exhibiting at different fairs, but also with their, marketing, and we created a brand for these companies. So we were here in Brazil, in a specific sector, with a specific company. The leap that these companies and the sectors had was amazing. And we were only, dealing with packages. With packages, of course, because first of all, what they need to do is not just live in Brasilia and be able to sell these products in Belo Horizonte. No, they want to sell these products in Africa, in the United States. So if a package is not good enough, the products will not get there with a good quality. So we had a great care with craftsmanship's products because they are very delicate products. So packaging was one of the priorities that we had to have. And there were many situations and histories. I'm recalling one of them right now that made the entire difference. For example, there were people who wanted to export, biscuits, cookies, very good ones. But we began to think, okay, but what if we create a beautiful can, colorful can with images, just like that? I'm not sure if they are Danish or Netherlandish, cookies. And they said, okay, yes, let's do this. And immediately they created a design of the product. They found someone that could fabricate this, etc. They placed the biscuits and the cookies inside the cans to sell it. But the product changed. They were no longer exporting, cookies or biscuits. They were exporting gifts. Because people were buying that boxes or these cans, just like we do with these Danish cookies, and we give it as gifts. So they opened up a different market. Their competition were no longer with the big and huge, cookies and food companies that were producing, cookies, but it was actually with other competitors that were selling gifts. So it changes things. Everything changes. So this passion that we have for design is something that even today is a priority inside Apex. I coming back to Apex because they invited me to go there, and I came to discuss one thing and ended up discussing 10 different things. And one of these things was to be a part of a commission of support, blah, blah, blah. Something. But it doesn't really matter right now. But I repeated from my experience from Apex and from Apex, it's a public organism that will give ideas, that will coordinate, that will make available different trainings, guidings. They will take leadership so they can manage different events on the 4 islands. But who are the people who are really doing this? Is the people who are exporting things. If they don't show up, nothing will happen. It doesn't really matter if you have a beautiful design project and institution where there's no one who wants to use this design. So we need people. People, they are troubling because we need to convince people. And people are very diverse and etc. There are no two equal people in the world. Look at your brothers or your familiars or your family. Are there two of them who are similar? No. They were in the same house, they were in the same city, attending to the same school, and we have two different things with siblings. So this is the most important challenge that we need to understand, that people are not the same. Once we understand that people are not the same, what are we doing from the point of view of society? We are ending with discrimination. We are ending with a non-acceptance of diversity. We are placing people together that think in different ways because they are different, but each one of them aggregates a different perspective that may change the entire result of the work. I like to make a little joke that I already did this at some speeches and I don't even remember what I read this, but if you imagine it, if everybody was the same as we are. You wake up in the morning and you brush your teeth, you look at yourself in the mirror. It's okay, you're seeing yourself. The first person that you see is yourself. You go out and you decide to, maybe have a breakfast and you're going to the bakery. You get into the bakery, the person who's attending you is just like you, looks just like you. You need to pay for the bills, it's another person who looks just like you. And then you ask yourself, where are these people made? And then you see the bakers and everybody looks just like you. And then you go out into the streets, you're looking at people, everybody, each one of these different people looks just like you. Would you like this? I wouldn't. I would go to another planet. I would like to be, an alien because I cannot look around and everybody's the same, is looking the same. And once you notice this, you think about this, your head changes. Oh my God, how good it is that everybody's different. There's men and women, poor people and rich people, black people, white people, different colors. Everybody looks different from me. How wonderful. And how spectacular. Let's place these people together to solve things together. So I'm going to finish this speech giving you and making this little joke. Love the fields where you are inserted in. If you don't love it, look wherever you love, and move and change fields. But we need to do things with passion, and having passion and also compassion, empathy for the other ones. But with passion, we make things more efficiently. No, speak proudly of what you're doing in your life. Oh, I do design. How do you change people's heads? Think about this as a designer. So I'll finish here telling you that this event certainly will stay in your head. Because of what you saw, what you heard, the people you met, the possibilities of partnerships that came along, because of the new challenges, new perspectives, and even because of someone that maybe had come along and will finish her speech. Thank you very much and good luck.
I would like to invite Franklin and Leandro. Let's register the moment with a picture, please. Yay. Thank you once again, a round of applause. Thank you, Doctor. Leandro, please stay here. I would like to invite you guys. Actually, invite Ricardo and also Dr. Dorothea. On Friday, we will be on the Tourism Secretariat. It will be an honor. If you can be there at 9 a.m., we will be starting there. And that will be the closure of the event. So that's the invite I give you. Now I'll give the floor Oh, okay, so my bad. So we're going to show the video of the sponsors. Because yeah, our supporters want um, proof. And then Leandro and Eneida Figueiredo will be moderating the next panels. Some videos first.
Solta as vinhetas. Cadê as vinhetas? Os vídeos com as vinhetas, gente.
A palavra pode levantar um país ou afundar uma reputação. Pode inflamar uma multidão ou calar uma verdade, mas também pode trazer memórias, sonhos e contar a história. Seja impressa em papel ou formada por pixels, a palavra pode confundir ou pode revelar. Em um mundo com tanto ruído, a palavra certa faz toda a diferença. Acompanhe o Correio também nos meios digitais. Correio Brasiliense. Jornalismo de verdade.
Eu sou o Bruno Tibério e todas as manhãs você confere aqui o TVC Manhã com as principais informações do trânsito e, claro, tudo aquilo que vai impactar você no seu dia. Então não se esqueça, hein? De segunda a sexta eu espero você.
Eu sou Brenner Vasconcelos e aqui comigo no TVC Esporte você confere todas as atualizações e informações do esporte do Brasil e do mundo. Eu espero você.
Sou a Isis Tainá e apresenta a Agenda Cultural. Aqui você fica por dentro das melhores opções de lazer, música, teatro e diversão para toda a família.
A palavra pode levantar um país ou afundar uma reputação. Pode inflamar uma multidão ou calar uma verdade, mas também pode trazer memórias, sonhos e contar a história. Seja impressa em papel ou formada por pixels, a palavra pode confundir ou pode revelar. Em um mundo com tanto ruído, a palavra certa faz toda a diferença. Acompanhe o Correio também nos meios digitais. Correio Brasiliense. Jornalismo de verdade.
Oi, oi. Acho que
Hello.
tá ruim aqui. Tá dando eco. Oi. Também queria agradecer
I
a,
also wanted
tem um
to.
eco, né? Uau.
There is some
Essa
sort
voz.
of
Uou.
echo here. I wanted to thank the professors
dos cursos que estão aqui, que
of
trouxeram
the
os seus
careers
estudantes.
here.
Professor Leandro Rolim.
Professor
deve estar
Leandro
obrigado.
Rolim,
Professor Ciro, que está aqui
Professor
na frente,
Ciro,
na
that's
frente,
here
professora
up front.
Mônica.
Professor
Muito obrigado
Monica,
por,
thank you
essa parceria está com a gente aqui. Bruno Porto, seja muito bem-vindo à Universidade
for that
Católica de
partnership.
Brasília, é um grande designer aí com
Bruno's a
reconhecimento
great
nacional.
designer
Obrigado, seja
with
sempre bem-vindo
national
também.
and international
A
recognition.
gente vai
Welcome
agora
as
abrir
well.
um painel chamado
And we will
Imaginários
open
Urbanos, Cultura
panel
e
called
Transformação Social.
Urban
Eu tenho
Imagination and Social
uma alegria imensa de trazer essas pessoas que são amigas
It is
e
a great joy
colegas de
to
trabalho.
bring these people who are friends and work
Com a felicidade
colleagues
de
as
convidar
well.
aqui o
It is
recente
an honor
mestre, né?
to
O
invite
Wellington
on
Melo, que
stage
trabalha com
Wellington
carnaval
Mello
e
that
economia
works
criativa.
with
Vem aqui
carnivals
sentar
and
aqui, por favor.
creative
Ele vai
economies.
apresentar um pouco
Please
sobre a pesquisa
come to the
dele.
stage. He's going
Palmas
to
para o
present a little
Wellington,
bit
legal.
about
Tá?
his research. A round of applause.
É. O Wellington, ele é mestre em desenvolvimento, cultura e
Wellington is
território.
masters
Ele é
in development,
pós-graduado em
culture and
especialização em lato
territories.
senso, em
He has
fotografia
a
digital.
PhD in lato
O Wellington
senso.
é formado em publicidade e propaganda. Ele é desenhista, artista e publicitário, designer gráfico. Olha só, agora vocês vão ver uma galera que dá para vocês se verem na possibilidade de trabalhos a partir dessa convergência que vocês estão aí, a turma do cinema, do audiovisual, da publicidade, do design. E veja aí, o Wellington trabalha com tudo isso, desenho industrial, publicidade, faz pesquisa e ele defendeu recentemente um excelente trabalho sobre o carnaval em Brasília e a economia criativa. Obrigado, Wellington, pela presença. Tá? Agora eu vou chamar aqui também uma amicíssima e colega de trabalho, a professora Daniela Carrossini. Muito bom, é uma parceria de longas datas. A Dani já veio aqui em outros eventos, Semana do Design, em bancas de mestrado e doutorado. Ela hoje faz parte ela é assessora de comunicação da reitoria da UNB. Ela coordenou o programa de pós-graduação em design da UNB. Ela é professora na UNB, docente associada ao departamento de design lá do Instituto de Artes da UNB, desenvolve uma série de programas, projetos de pesquisa e tem um grupo de pesquisa com política e representa o Brasil na Rede Internacional Técnico-Políticas, Redes de Poder, Ação Coletiva. Então é uma grande colega, uma grande pesquisadora e eu tenho uma honra e alegria de ter você de novo aqui com a gente. Tá, Dani? Muito obrigado. Agora a gente vai convidar aqui a Pamela.
Now we are going to invite on stage Pamela Março. Pamela came from Rio, right, Pamela? So yeah, here we have a carioca here. She is a doctor in design. She graduated in the State University of Rio, and she has a master's as well in studies of life in Latin America. And she also studies all the political aspects of these regions. She also has different authorial projects. Our proposal here is to have a round of a conversation about the researches that are developed in the field of creative economy design and how that interconnects with other areas linked to credibility. This is basically a chat, so we will give you the microphone so you can introduce yourself and then we will debate. Pamela, you can start. Wellington first. Okay, so Wellington, you can start because we have the slide here for you. Good morning. It is an honor for me to be here present. My research is named carnavalização, and it talks about the structure of Brazilian carnival. My intention was conducting a research through the mechanisms of governance that are in place in the federal district to make that link between the carnival and creative economy. It was a research with the focus of explaining a little bit better how carnival happens, specifically the carnival of 2025. And I needed to answer some questions regarding that study, which were how we can observe those experiences lived in other cities that are references of successful carnivals, such as Rio, São Paulo, Recife, Salvador, compared to our carnival here in the federal district, and how we can establish a flow between the government and the carnival goers, those people who go to the carnival fairs and everything. And also how the private sector interacts with those carnival expressions. Sometimes, besides having the laws already set, we need to also listen to the other side, which are the people who are bound to follow the legislation. And we also have a lot of data because I went looking for what IPEA produced, all that information, to be able to link that information to what the interviewee said. Here I'm talking about the people who I interviewed. And these are interviews focused on some groups. And well, firstly, I consulted a research, or actually a survey, of an institute that conducted a carnival in the federal district, and I went to see the participation of the population in that carnival and asked about questions such as accessibility, the trash cans, and public security. But in general, I would say that the population feels very welcome in the carnival parties. So they are really open and comfortable with the whole situation. But then I needed to interview directly the people, so I listed some representatives of the carnival sector. I interviewed the Carnival District, that's the name of the institution. The carnivals were funded by the party groups of carnivals. The committee that was built precisely to discuss those issues with the management of civil society, and the president of the schools of Samba. There was a secretary and also the representative. Some of them were not too eager to be interviewed. Here I am showing a part of the legislation from 2003-2004. And this piece of legislation says that people needed to try to figure out how to perform carnival based on the context of the city. And it was in 2011 where you have carnivals as an official event. And then you have to see it from that perspective. 2017, it was a carnival with state politics. 2023. This is a decree that says how things will happen. So it shows what is the role of each or agency, and legislation here, it's really concrete, but then you have to reinforce it. This is a comparative table. And here I show Recife, Salvador, Rio, and Brasilia. It shows the number of groups, carnival groups, each city has. Brasilia is the one that has the least, or the fewest, with 68. Total amount invested as well. In Rio was 90 million reais. You may say, oh, this is due to the samba schools, but no. The thing is, there is a lot of profit in Rio, and you have also creative economy that's much more developed over there. They recycle a lot. They encourage creative action and creativity in general. The schools of samba need to have some sort of plot twist, novelties and innovations, so they can win the carnival contest. So each year you may see people flying or lights turning off and on in different ways. And also some other things such as synthetic furs, etc. In the analysis I made, I see here some results of the addition of these three instances: the group of the party makers or the carnival makers. So you need a structure of the models that can guarantee more efficiency to perform the carnivals, because what happens in carnivals happens every year in February or March, but this year, for example, we only send resources during January. So you have to do a lot of things. You have to do the costumes, the rehearsals. So it's a whole construction of creativity that you have to do. There is a lot of preparation behind it. A lot of people complain that we should do the democratization of public resources. It happened this year as well in the school of samba and traditional sectors. The government does not have a program to encourage sustainability through the sponsor of other companies. So they want the resources to be increased. Often enough, we sacrifice a tradition in the benefit of other things, and that shouldn't happen. the awards of these type of innovation with sustainability, etc., are important, so you can guarantee that these type of better innovations are maintained. Some people complained about the public halls as well. So that the representation. Sometimes people feel they are not being listened enough. Sometimes they don't listen to what people have to say. So they know a lot about the demands of the sector. The people understand the needs because they are living them. And we need to know about those needs so we can solve them. There are bills that say that you should contribute from the state with 100 million, but sometimes only a quarter of that or less reaches that part of the carnivals, because this is money for culture in general. So sometimes this goes against the culture planning they do every year, because when you try to perform something that's not Brazilia's tradition, when this happens, you are going against the culture of the people of that place. And that is a complaint because the government does not invest on campaigns that can better spread these expressions of cultures, especially carnivals that happens over there. This year, there were 2.5 million people in that type of event. A lot of people come from other states. But you also need to invest in the infrastructure of the place and in the carnival celebrations. So what about Galo da Madrugada that has over 2 million people every year? That should be its role. So you have to think also of the restrooms, public cleaning. But it is a population demanding those things that is going to cause the state to intervene or to invest more in it. So sometimes we have a lot of struggles with territory. And sometimes society cannot accept that the manifestations that are in that territory be maintained, to be maintaining those territories. Thank you. Do you like the carnivals, guys? No, wow. You come to Brazil's carnivals. Ah, a lot of people did. Who went this year? Oh, there are a handful of people that did. So this type of researches made us turn our head to some of these problems. So It is good to be able to have a perspective on that through your research. Thank you, everyone here. Now I am going to give the floor to Pamela. Feel free if you want to walk around. Hold up a second. Great. As it was said, my subject of presentation today is Design Latin America, and I would like to thank everyone, especially Eneida, for the opportunity to be here in the forum. I will introduce myself a little bit so I can explain how was my trajectory. So I did my master's at UNB in the Department of Design, and after that I returned to Rio. And actually, I am not that karaoke. I am Petropolitan because I am from Petropolis. I am from the coast, actually from the mountains of Rio, the mountain region of Rio. And I came back here during the pandemic, and I did my PhD in UFRJ, and then I continued to what I started here in the Department of Design. So my beginnings in this academic trajectory was about a comparison study, what I call peripheral spontaneous design, which are the practices of entertainment and all these games that we have that are inserted in the urban tiche fabric of our society. And I compared Cuba and Brazil. Specifically, the production of Ernesto Rosa, which is a Cuban designer. He already did all that process of research in Havana and other cities, and I did it here in Recife, in Brasília Teimosa. And I started my performance, my presence here in Latin America, which is one of my passions, and the other one is design, of course. And anyways, during my doctorate, I expanded and I started exploring design in Latin America through all those aspects, which are things that after a lot of study, I concluded that this is a very good design, a design of resistance, because it's not only about resisting consumerism and capitalist logic, but also to live. Then I forgot to comment that in professional practice, I had the honor to be a substitute teacher in the UNB in design, and I also have my studies, my papers, PhD papers. I also study in the University of Chile, in FAO, Architecture and Organization College in Chile. And my intention back then was to go to a different country of Latin America to understand how these practices were debated, and if they were debated within these professions, with the topics of creativity, architecture, design, with that perspective of popular practices beyond craftsmanship. And given that my subject is expanded now, first of all, I needed to understand what was Latin America, because I don't know how was your experience, but Latin America during my education, not only as a student, but in other areas, that was a very how can I put it, a complementary subject, so to say. So I was struggling to understand what that was. So I started with the studies of Darcy Ribeiro, that has a thesis on what's Latin America and if it exists. And amongst all the possibilities of interpretation of Latin America, from a linguistics perspective and sociogeographic perspective, territorial one, Darcy says, and I would like to agree with him, that the big definition of Latin America is that we are opposing the rich America, and we can see that throughout history, but also now in the present moment with all those geopolitical conflicts that we are going through. So now I started thinking, okay, so we have that condition. We're part of the capitalism victims, and we know that we live deindustrialization and all that complex process. So, what is design for all of us within that context? So, in that perspective, and of course, approaching other authors that also share that vision, I understand that within the Latin American context, design can be understood as life production. And what we like, or how do we like, would we like to see design as? And we have Arturo Escobar, which is probably one of the anthropologists from Latin America because he's Colombian. That's been talked a lot recently because he gave this ontologic twist to design. So it is interesting to think about this lack of obedience and decolonization, of course. Because we have more intense debates about oppression and political matters, we have, or I have seen that we still depend a lot on other people's imagination. I'm not saying we're not uh, uh, main agents, but it is complex. When I encourage students to disobey and told them, like, let's allow ourselves to create, which is what we need to do. But of course, with all this colonization process, we were forbidden to create. Of course, there was always resistance, but so it was difficult for students to allow themselves this disobedience. So from then on, I started thinking, okay, so how can I, as a professor, work on this with the students so we can have a process of letting go of that imagination of other people or other cultures. And in that process, I found a methodology of a Puerto Rican anthropologist, Agustin Lamontes, and he precisely talks about that matter of conjugating what he calls doble crítica, or double criticism, which is reality, but also what transcends. what we can imagine, what we produce. So that's why I propose disobedience and letting go and the process of decolonization. As I already said, I start with that trick. And I understand that these practices are important, so we can start with this a critical way of thinking, but also having this intention of allowing ourselves to think in a different way and understanding that there are other ways to imagine. We need to understand them and treat them in an abstract way. We are in a very rich territory. Well, I am talking about those aspects, but what would be an example of that? This is a Cuban technological disobedience, but I believe everyone here, or most of us, is following what Bad Bunny has been doing and the picture of his album. So it is interesting how that Latin American aesthetics and that process of memory and the process of interference, I understand it to be important, and we need to bring that to design. And of course, as I said, that already exists, that's there. Sometimes we do not know it due to all that historical process. And I bring some examples to give context, and it is important to say that everything that I'm telling you, it's not literally my thesis, because my thesis, we have to finish it. But for those who are researchers and for those who love research, people continue. So to give some context here for you guys and regarding the event, I bring the example of rayo que parte, or lightning that strikes in English. But this representation of modernism in Belém, the state of Pará in Brazil. And this is about starting to know our stories and the danger of the unique stories. We have a lot of stories and we need to know them so we can start having that other perspective. Another example that I find interesting, I don't know if you know this, but this Freddy Mamani, this is an example, and it is important to say that Freddy Mamani, I don't know if he graduated, but he was a bricklayer. And he has very interesting things because there was this type of Los Andes architecture in Bolivia, and it is iconic indeed. But it was created, that aesthetics, I mean, not only the aesthetics, but its materiality based. I mean, to me, he's everything. He's an architect, an engineer, a bricklayer, and in spite of not being graduated, but he managed to do this interpretation of the culture and the identity of his community. So at first sight, people might be shocked because it's a common story, but with a perspective of what we are used to see as architecture. And just so you can understand, because I already talked a lot about this, so what was the object of my thesis? Well, I developed what I call a counter-discipline. That was precisely some guidance for those who have the intention to work with Latin America, and that production of a different imaginary that's not so dependent. And it's important to say that I am not part of the people who reject any production of the United States, from Europe. No, I understand We need to be smart, anthropophagic. We need to be strategist in that sense. So, and part of my thesis, the one case study, actually two of them, were conducted here in the UNB, in the University of Brasilia. And that was my first lab.
In that moment, we were in the pandemics. And the idea was now to go into the territories and to work there. Work with the images. But it was quite interesting seeing the results in regards to Brasilia. And one of the main topics that touched me was precisely this relationship with the narratives of Brasilia, the other stories of Brasilia. Because when we look from the outside, it is a story of Brasilia, but actually Brasilia has many different stories and narratives. It is not only the narrative as the modernist story, etc. We have many stories of resistance, and this was something very intense inside the final projects. And I invite you to read them. And lastly, when we think about market, for those of you who are closer to this type of discussions, I am close to the academia. Recently there was we distributed for free from World Global Style Network, which is an agency, one of the authorities in this process of futurism and of different trends. And they said, yes, Latin America is the epicenter to act to the new businesses. I think it is very important for those who have an interest to understand how they're interpreting this data, how they are interpreting the Latin American identity in this perspective of diversity, of contradictions. But for me, and for other researchers and professors that are closer to what we could say that is social design or innovation, social transformation, that they have this more critical and political perspective on design. We see these reports, but we also have a great concern that this identity should not be reduced to a product, a market product. We should not make less political what is our Latin American identity. So me, along with Mr. Tawan from Peru, he's a teacher there, a professor there. Recently he has been in Lancaster because he's finishing his doctorate. We have some different fronts. One of them is a group that we have set of researchers, but also of students. Any interested or people in critical studies of design in Latin America, which is Eclit Latam. And I would also like to extend this invitation in case that any of you have any interest. You can call me on my social media that we can add you to the group. And another front that we have is that actually Juan is in front of it and he has invited me to be a part of it. It's a group inside the Design Research Society so that we can begin to think maybe having more voice, let's say it like this. What is one of the main institutions about design on research, or maybe the biggest one, I'm not sure. We are there, and I would like to thank you for the opportunity. You can see the QR code of my thesis in case you're interested in it, and I will invite you to read it. Thank you so much. Pamela, how nice. How nice is your work? Very, very nice. I was commenting here with Dani, and this group in here, we were exactly talking about this, about a counter-demonic action. I believe that this is a great example of action, counter-demonic action, parting from that class that we had yesterday. I believe that these are students that have understood quite well what the examples that you brought. They are very concrete ones and important ones. And I was thinking about if we're, talking about carnival, we are now being disobedient. And I believe that, carnivalizing things is a way of existence that is about disobedience. And I think that's wonderful. And for those who understand quite well about this, it's Tanya. Yeah, one person who understands a lot about this is Tanya. So I will pass the floor now for Dani Rossini. Once again, thank you so much for your time and your presence that I know that is extremely disputed, but it's a great joy to have you here. Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much. I looked into Bruno there, and he has his own group of people, isn't it? Well, I am also a little bit disobedient, but I'm also obedient sometimes. But I'd just like to comment here that, well, I wrote what I'm going to say it right now because my memory is very short lately, and time as well. So it's more organized for me to be able to read it to you. But just to give you some context, I didn't bring you any slides. I didn't brought any images. Didn't bring any images that I believe that are quite important. But I also believe that it's important that we can have our own images, as Pamela has told us. And I will talk a little bit about this, about the human imaginaries, about cities, and about Brasilia specifically. So I'd just like to pose you a question that I was reflecting about what was commented here today's morning about the role of teachers and professors. But before that, I would like to ask you something. I believe that it's important to reflect about this role. I chose to be a professor. I believe that Leandro also chose to be a professor. And we have a very objective action of building this country named Brazil. I would also like to say that the Brazilian government, yes, they do need about the accountability or responsibility of investing in public policies. After all, we live in a country which is very, very unequal. It's not a country which is okay. It's a country that is very unequal. And we need to have this perception as designers, as communicators, as producers, from the audiovisual sector, as citizens. And I know that we are being transmitted. And for those of you who are watching, we really expect that you can have some sort of application of public resources in a more efficient way. So we expect to have universitarian autonomy. And I'm not sure if everybody knows about this, but universities, federal universities, which I'm a part of, it has a lot of resources, but these resources is given back to the federal government. We cannot reinvest them because we have some sort of limit, constitutional limit that limits us to make an investment in the federal universities themselves. And this is horrible, just horrible. So their universities became to become degraded, and with their actions degraded because we cannot do this sort of reinvestment. So federal government, please, I don't know if there's anyone watching us, but come on, they may do something about this or help to create this path. We have really been struggling for the federal universities in all different senses. We are able to guarantee some victories on how to elect our representatives in a more direct way, but I believe that it's important for us to reinforce that investments are very necessary for education, health, safety, for living, for many different areas that we really are needy of them in this country. So I'd just like to remind you, because I'm going to talk about a situation which is Brasilia, that's, well, Brasília, understood as a federal district, but I'm not just talking about plano piloto. I'm talking about all the different administrative regions that compose our territory, and that is it reflects, I believe, Brazil. It is so nice to study Brasilia because it really reflects what Brazil is. 70% of the population of the federal district receive less than 2 minimal wages, 70%. So it's a lot of people, isn't it? So we are talking from this place so that we can have a reference of the place where we are talking about. So I hadn't studied. I've been studying this for 10 years right now. It's a continuous study, which is about human imaginaries. It's a study that is difficult to be made, and it takes a lot of time because we look into people. And Dorothea mentioned today's mornings about listening, about participating collectives. So it's a little bit about this, what we do with human imaginaries. We listen people from the city. I am not listening to the government, I'm not listening to the companies, I'm listening to citizens. Citizens that may be entrepreneurs, but that may be governmental agents, that may be public workers, it doesn't matter. It could be a professor, it could be you. We listen to these people. So we created a study, a portrait, and I would just like to remind you that this research that we are doing it for so long, it has generated many fruits already. It has generated many other researches that have already been finalized. And it is some sort of meta-research. So it serves for many, many things, besides the things that people want to look for. And this study that has 10 years for now, it was quite strong during the pandemic, so where we have captured that moment. In the ending of the pandemics, a little bit about the post-pandemic, where we have seen this portrait of what is a federal district, which is not pretty. But it's not pretty in its results. When we see these results, but it is pretty so that we can use it as a possibilities, huge possibilities. Because we are parting from these people who live, inhabit, dream about the federal district and need the federal district. Love or hate the federal district. It's about desire. So it's about listening and using what I'm listening from you. All of you who are here now, listening to these people and understanding how this collective has been made concrete in this portrait of what we expect, of what we would like for our lives in the federal district. And this is about all types of policies. That is why I chose to create this research so many time ago, provocated by Armando Silva, which is the researcher that developed this way of looking into cities. He's from Colombia. Just like Pamela, I work a lot with Latin American. I never stop working with other countries as well, but I believe that Latin America is my focus because it's the place where I live in. So it is very important for me. So what did this study that we have created, not by ourselves? There are many, many different people who already went through this study. But those of us who are involved in this research, they end up staying and developing many other ideas that come from it. The thing is that the human imaginaries, and here, Danny, you are talking about creative cities of design. I will tell you what this has to do with it. All of it. I talked with Leandro that I was going to be brief, but I gave this huge introduction. But I'm going to focus now on the situation. This sort of reading that we have of the territory, parting from human imaginaries, it's very important. When they are binded to design, I believe that design has a fundamental role, and we have a vision of a world that I think that is very different. I think that other professions also do, but I think that design is already born this way, with a more amplified vision, and with a possibility and an availability, more than a possibility, to listen to solve real problems. So it's in the sense that I have heard, and we have heard, and all of you that have participated in research. I'm not sure if anyone in here have participated of it, but we listened to many people. And in that moment, it's when we're able to notice what could be applied to a territory, to the urban politics and policies. So parting from this collective knowledge, they ended up revealing us many different experiences and how these people experiment the city in their daily lives. How will they interpret its centrality, its peripheries? How do they perceive the opportunities? Where do they identify themselves with these inequalities and these lacks of things and powers of different territories? And now, just to talk a little bit about a challenge of urban planning. and that this distance in between the planning, institutional planning, and the real experience of the city, and how we would be able to make these things get closer, no, together. Well, so we have these urban programs, territorial strategies that usually work with demographic, economical, and physical indexes and figures, and these are the fundamental data. But many times, or in the majority of times, or almost always, they live outside the central dimension of the human life. What is the human life? We are the people who are living in there. The way how the city is perceived, the way that the city is lived, and how it is made a symbol by people, and this is very, very important. And when we notice, or when we think about the symbolic dimension of the cities, or for what it represents to us, how would we like for the city to be, or how we live it? I believe that's the place where design can have a strategic contribution, which is very important. Design is an area, a field, not only a discipline. I really enjoy seeing it as with a more amplified perspective to it, that is working precisely in this articulation between the reading of a context, the formulation of different problems, and building solutions. So in the last years, I believe that we can see design acting on very different areas like public innovation, design for public policies, and also inside the strategies. Our knowledge is very important for this field. And here I would like to name a lot of examples that we could, talk about them. But I have many things, and I'm talking too much already. But I think that one of the contributions, here's one example. I chose many examples, but I think I will give you two examples actually. First, the contribution in the mediation between different agents. So, because the cities are such complex spaces that are about the productive sectors, the governments, collective sectors, social movements, etc. Local unities. I believe that it's in this field that we can have this more amplified perspective, to listening and to transform this into action or actions, and acting as a mediator of building these new agendas, urban shared agendas, to be able to bring into our design spaces with our amplified perspective, different perspectives, so that we can understand, at least, if we don't have a precise or direct solution, because many times we're able to do this because we're working with different actors at the same time. But at least if we're not able to do this, we can generate some guidelines so that this path work or this path may happen. And I believe that is some other fundamental contribution from design is the ability to work with future visions and scenarios. This is very fundamental. And imaginaries, which are this field where I act on, I believe they help out with the visions of our daily lives, of what is lived, of what is perceived, and a possibility of a more structured vision of a future. And this helps us, structuring and guiding and creating strategies for human planning, and also for the economical parts and social parts. And this is quite nice. It's also important to highlight that here in Brasilia, we're not working by ourselves. We have worked with 48 other cities from Latin America to create this portrait of Latin America. And it's quite a big portrait. I will share later with you the space where we have all of these brutal this raw data, let's say, this data that was collected from the different researchers in different cities. But it's important to say that these are open data, and they are available for those who want to use it from these different 48 cities, from the capitals of Latin America. At least the entire South America has participated with its capital cities, and some countries and cities from Central America have also participated. It's worth taking a look into this very broad vision. And it's important to understand that, as you have said it already, we have some sort of approximation with our neighbors, with our group, in this capitalistic periphery inside our periphery here. It's nice to see how similar we are and how different we also are. we are similar or equals when we are dreaming. We are equals as creativities, we are equal for many different things. But we are also different because we look into the place where we live in, and the place where we live in, it's just as important. It's like, oh, how do we wake up, the time that we take, from going home to work, and how do we move ourselves in the city, how it's public transportation, if this is bringing us life quality or if it isn't. How do we spend the weekends? How do we chat with each other? With who do we chat? With our neighbors, or only with our work colleagues? Or do we chat with, only with a friend? Or do we live by ourselves? Do we live separated? Are we happy? Are we sad? Do we feel safe or do we feel unsafe? How are we in this city? So this is different. This is quite different. But for those who live in here in the Federal District, for example, I can say, for those who live in Plano Piloto, for example, in the central region, they fear a lot of what comes from the periphery. From what comes from the periphery, what's in the periphery of the center. Fear. And it's not fear of a lack of safety, it's a fear of the unknown, someone who never came here. And many of the things that we believe in, a symbol of here of the Federal District, for many things, many people haven't even seen these symbols. People who live here. So, how is this important for us to understand what can still be built for a city? And I will finish up with a small sentence that I wrote down, not to forget, that we're talking about creative cities of design, and even about this, just think about it. What does it mean? What does this mean? At least for me. To be a creative city of design cannot mean just to this, recognize the heritage that we already have and to promote events, to reaffirm a historical vocation. That's not it. It needs to mean to use design as a public intelligence to face human problems, to articulate culture and development, to get daily lives and planning closer, to build more inclusive strategies for territories of the future. And I believe that this is the most broad destiny of UNESCO. If we're going to read what UNESCO means, everything is connected. We are connecting collaboration, sustainable development, and creativity. Is this what we're talking about when we're talking about a creative city of a design? It's not design itself. It's not just as a designer making the city happen, but it's the intelligence of design trying to work so that this can happen. So I believe that's it. I would like to thank you all. I had many things to talk about, but that's it. Thank you so much. Thank you for having listened to me. Almost at lunchtime. I say that it's no hungry time. So we're almost there. Wait for just a little bit longer, okay? Thank you so much, Danny. You have such a powerful speech. I believe that, Danny convocates us to reflect about this broad perspective about design. And just like the initial speech, convocates us to position ourselves politically, seeing the different demands. And I think that is nice to hear. Here, we have a group of people, and I would even like to we have a group of people about the human centers, and we thought, okay, we cannot do this without design. And that's when we thought about, okay, we have to bring design in here. And then that's when we brought design here, and then design began to transform other courses, which is amazing. So we have students here from cinema, from communication, from audiovisual, and we need to understand that design intersects it all of the different professional activities of you. In a world where there is no longer, separations that are so well divided. They are, multiverses and pluriverses, multi-activities. So I believe that you bring us this reflection, which is quite interesting, thinking about Brasília. Wellington is also thinking about Brasília. Thinking about the carnival. I think that Pamela is thinking about the perspective of Latin America, thinking about possibilities of seeing the world from this, the colonial perspective, which is quite interesting, or place ourselves as Latin America. This is essential. So I believe that in this sense, this speech of you converts, and I hope that it gets to this audience that is just coming to the university, and that sometimes we're not sure of how we're going to create this, these paths of the future, but it is nice for you to have a more amplified sense of what could be, your profession, and of thought as well. Sometimes it's not just thinking about it as you as professionals, but also as critical subjects, as people who are questioning the different instances and contexts. And I believe that is very important in this sense. We have a very little time, so I'm going to do the following. I'm going to pass once again, only so that you can have this final speech, and then I'm going to ask you. If someone wants to ask a question, so we're going to have one question, and then okay. So someone in the audience already asked. Okay. So then we're going to answer these final considerations, some goodbyes, and we're going to listen to this question. Bruno, present for the students, please. If you can present yourself for the students. Thank you, Leandro. Okay, let me see this. As Franklin, Leandro, and Danny have mentioned, very gently, I have to say that I became very offended by what Danny said, that I have lived in here, but I'm no longer here. I am here right now. I'm not in hologram. It is not AI. And I came here for this specifically forum. And I lived in Brasilia from 2012 until 2018. And I was the coordinator of the graphic design from the YESB, and Dani, drags me to so many different things. She, placed me in the sectorial council of design along with Rogério, and we brought some, interesting Latin American events here to Brasilia. We brought ADEGRAF, ADG Brazil, the Union of Brazilian Designs in 2017. Well, I was a part of the council from ADEGRAF during the years that I was living here. I no longer live here since 2018, first in the Netherlands, now in Canada. I'm finishing a doctorate that Pamela, that this must be finished. It must be finished. And it's a gorilla of 300 kilos that, it stays on your back, that you're not able to do anything. You said, oh, I'm going to go there in Brasilia. Oh, I have a thesis that I have to deliver. I'm really loving the forum. I think that it's very important to have them. I know that not everyone were able to go to the other days of this event because they are happening in these different spaces. I think it's an interesting strategy, but it's also not perfect. But you can see the different, speeches and panels in the YouTube. And one of the things that we talked about yesterday at UNB and also at the deputy cameras, because we were able to talk with make a registry of a different of people who have an amazing power over us. One of the things that I think about when we're talking about the different players that we have in the city, or when we see different analyses of the carnival, of the different mobilizations, how do we create channels of permanent channels of listening in these different players, among these different players? Do we have enough experiences from professional associations? We have experiences from the regional councils of design. How are we able? It's almost a provocation. It's not a question actually, because but I have the answer. Oh, you do, of course you do. You, as always, I have my answer, of course. Of self autonomy. I'm going to give you an answer. Well, first of all, I'd just like to thank you. Thank you so much for listening. Those of you who are just beginning the graduation, please feel free. And be free. Be free. Be free with your creativity. Well, try new things that may seem impossible. This is very important. Bruno, here, saying my list of possibilities, I believe in a tool. It's an instrument. It's not. It doesn't give a solution to anything. But what do we lack? Data. We do not have enough data. We're not able to work without data. Wellington talked about this problem. I wasn't able to talk to a specific person, etc. Maybe because we don't have enough data. This research that we had generated thousands or millions of data that are available for everyone. Does it solve? It does not solve anything exactly. But why does it work? I believe that this vision where we have enough information to be able to build things. Here in my list of possible actions, I will place a possibility of action that is an observatory. The observatories, they have this role of looking into reality, of bringing data into this reality coming from different demands. It can be can come from the government, from society, from the private sector. It doesn't matter, from the collectives, universities. So observatories, I'm not sure it's an answer for everything, but it's a tool, an instrument that I may believe that it may generate us much information. I have been participating in some observatories of networks of observatories, especially connected to cultural policies, and they have brought us a vision of a world which is absolutely different maybe from what we believe that reality is. So a possible tool for us, but for example, the tripod, as Nodorotai was mentioning about, civil society, government, and private sector, an observatory is also not sustainable without all of this, because if the government changes, then the observatory can end. Civil society, they also need resources to be able to keep the researches going on inside the observatories. And the private sector can maybe only connect these observatories to their own interests. So we need some sort of settlement, a cooperation between this tripod. So I believe that an observatory like this can work very well with this tripod. I loved it. I thought it was it's an excellent tool as an answer. The idea of an observatory is amazing. I believe that this is the way. But if you allow me, and to the new students here, 30 seconds. We do not do anything by ourselves. So the idea of an observatory is precisely this one. We're going to unite these different players. They are in their different sort of context, and we're going to ask them, so how, especially you, new students, but also those older of you, we have professional associations, trade unions, we have students associations, collectives, groups. When I moved to Brasilia, the first thing that I thought, well, where is the trade union? Oh, there's a Degrafi. Okay, I'm going to be. Where is this group of people? Oh, okay, I'm going to get there. The first speech that I had was at university. So then he said, no, come on, come here, speak with us. Let's talk about your experience in China, because I lived in China for 6 years. Please come and talk a little bit about this. And I did it. I was there, giving design classes for Chinese people. I will go back there one day. But gather together, and an observatory is a perfect way of gathering. I'm the mediator, and this function is very, very bad. It's a very bad one. But I'm going to be a bit disobedient. I'm going to disobey you, Pamela. We have 2 speeches, 2 final considerations, because we wanted to have a new panel, but I'm going to group them up. I'm going to get them together. What am I going to do? I'm going to call for 2 more speeches, and you're going to stay here listening, because we're going to become this very big group of people who research and think about and disobey. But who has organized this was Neida and Neida. So I believe that it is important as well to give a round of applause for Neida.
Ada was responsible for everything we have done this morning, and also Bruno's responsibility. She's a designer, a researcher as well in visual arts, graduated in the University of Brasilia. She is doing a PhD over there as well. Daniela is her tutor. She has an MBA in marketing and a degree on interior design. Thank you. Beatriz, you have the floor. Beatriz did her master's here in the Católica. And she will be presenting a paper on that perspective. And it gathers some data on that perspective of what we're discussing here. We're also inviting here Claudia Stefania Ferrari. Welcome. Also from Rio. A lot of karaoke here. I'm sorry, Claudia. Then it needs to leave a little earlier. Yeah, I had a commitment already scheduled in Asa Norte, so I'm sorry. Yeah. Okay, so what will we do? Bia is gonna speak briefly, and then Claudia. But prior to that, we have a video which is the video of Trade Sector South. Then we will close our panel with Beatriz and Claudia, and then we close this morning. So please play the video.
Que atuam no setor comercial sul ou em Brasília. O objetivo da etapa diagnóstico foi ouvir trabalhadores, empreendedores, artistas, gestores e cidadãos que vivem o ambiente do território, ampliando a compreensão do ecossistema criativo e tecnológico presente na região.
Hoje a gente está aqui no setor comercial sul para realizar a primeira saída de campo, para explorar um pouco desse território aqui do setor comercial e trazer um pouco dessa nossa perspectiva subjetiva para a pesquisa em campo. Então aqui hoje a gente vai fazer esse registro e pontuar as intercorrências, as recorrências e as singularidades desse território aqui no setor comercial sul.
A intenção do mapa afetivo é trazer uma camada a mais a partir das sensações, dos sentimentos, da fabulação, da imaginação das pessoas que participaram da primeira fase e que usam o setor, que trabalham no setor, que estão por aqui. Então foi um trabalho muito bacana, a gente conseguiu entender muita coisa coletivamente, uma construção coletiva, uma cocriação, e a gente espera que contribua com o projeto.
Os resultados desse processo vão guiar as próximas etapas do projeto, que incluem a estruturação de propostas urbanísticas, institucionais e digitais para o setor comercial sul. O Polo Criativo Tecnológico surge assim como uma iniciativa voltada a impulsionar a inovação, fortalecer a economia criativa e estimular novas formas de convivência e desenvolvimento econômico no Distrito Federal. O estudo diagnóstico marca o início de uma trajetória coletiva que une ciência, criatividade e inovação, e o movimento de retomada da pulsão desse território que já está em marcha. Sociedade civil, empresários e empreendedores, prefeitura e governo têm várias ações em curso. O setor comercial sul está pronto para ser redescoberto e projetado para o futuro.
Excellent. Now, Beatriz Ramos with the floor. I think you can hear me. First of all, thank you for everyone's presence. Thank you for the invitation, Eneida. It is always an honor to come back here to the Catholic University because I was a little bit busy, but I could come after all. So bringing all these contributions is always really good. This project of Setor Comercial Sul we started developing last year, basically with the same team that developed a whole landscape. We went to all RAs, understanding the powerhouses in these regions. And then opportunities came to develop a hub in that sector, thinking it is our representation of a normal city. Say that because in Brazil we have that sectorization, so to say. We have the residential part. We have some streets that are specific for one thing, for example, drugstores, etc. So that's why that's what I mean when I talk about normal or not normal. So that is the type of audience or people that have maybe more money. Sometimes we have places that sell food for a couple of bucks. People working in those areas. So that was a really cool investigation because we got some information that there were about 5,000 legal entities over there that mailing in the creative industry, but a lot of buildings that were not being used. Very well related to that matter of drug trafficking. I don't know if we have slides with some pictures just to better illustrate what I'm talking. But if there isn't, that's fine. And within that project, I performed a lot in the development of a diagnosis study, and the video showed a little our outcomes. And we understand this sector as a territory, a creative territory, and by that, we need to think on social relationships that are developed in that territory. And that research was divided, and that territory was divided actually in 3 layers. We worked with an underground layer, so to say, which are informal workers, articulators, people working on the streets, some other institutions a little bit more consolidated, some companies that strengthen that work in Setor Comercial Sul, and the underground layer with which are some players in the upper ground actually. We could say the institute in the sector that works both with the cultural part but also supporting people in situation of social vulnerabilities. Some representatives, big companies such as the Graph, ACDF, that are promoting this event as well. There. This was the development of the brand. Some quantitative that I mentioned, some occupation also that we could map over there. Most of the activities have some creative foundation. Within the territory, we go to our collection instruments, which was about listening people who are living in those territories. When we're thinking about research, there is something on the fly on the wall, which is always like watching. But us as researchers, we worked a lot with cartographic photographs. So we were in the territory, we live those places, and there is no way to be absent from a particular opinion. So in addition to having that particular opinion, we went also to listen those people from those three layers I mentioned, the upper and underground and the middle ground. And within our cartographic photograph, these are some registers from the photographs we took in the moment of going to the field, leaving that territory in all possible ways, consuming and talking, sitting on a bar to have a snack, etc. And within that methodology of cartographic photograph, we also have a division of and urban art, graffitis, etc. Unfortunately, we also have like drug trafficking that is part of the territory. A lot of empty spaces as well that signal why that space is empty, because we can think of different ways of occupying that space. There are some singularities and things. For example, these are pictures of the field storage. There are people playing bingo. So during lunch, you don't have some space to actually, get some rest. And people end up improvising. I think these were people playing bingo in a parking lot. And also an artist in the middle of the streets. And based on those perspective that our researchers had, we call the people that we heard from the upper, underground, middle ground workers and the founders, business owners from commerce organizations. We invited them back to see what our researchers were observing and also have or create a map of those places, thinking of the memories that people had in that space, not only right now, but throughout their life. How you could transform that space of a person that worked there for I don't know how many years, that would get out of the metro and went there to work in Pacho, Brazil, being what they had as a memory and what they missed, what they wanted to have in that territory. The affection map was in that sense. Leandro has their result that we did of that map, thinking on that imaginary based on the photographs that we took in the photographic cartograph or cartograph photograph. This was developed by Aline Avila, who was invited to talk about this methodology she develops. And it was diagrammed by that team of Cajuina that is here. That's fine, yeah. Carol is there participating in the mapping of the project. So due to time issues, I can talk a little bit about that, but it was a little bit of the presentation that we had here about Creative Hub of Technology in Setor Comercial Sul. This project, as I said, is divided in 4 phases. This is the first one. And this was also very well related to this sector, and this urban plan is not thinking about restructuring anything. doing a great work or something like that. We're just thinking about how we can adapt the structure that we already have based on that diagnosis we did initially. And the other two phases are the governance plan and urban zoning. That is it. Thank you. Let me check if my microphone is working. This is the materialization of something you heard a lot today. Dorothea talks about this triple tool that we have in this area and that is comprised in this project. Danny talks a lot about listening. And also talking about design as a dimension in society. And design of possible scenarios for that setor comercial sul. And whoever knows Carnival know that this sector is a territory where the Carnival actually takes place. And then we listen. And this involved post-graduation. We went there with the team of masters and doctors. And says Carol is scientific initiation, plus a junior company and graduation students. We did this work of listening to people who live the territory. I learned a lot that design is more about listening, because you're projecting toward whom, right? So that active listening makes sense when you are projecting. So it's more about listening. And you have to do that beyond the project. And then we materialize that in this affection map. Here we have some quotations. We have the pictures that show that degraded space, but we also have desires that show these pictures. So this is the convergence of this qualitative part. So it's just to add a little bit to what you said. Thank you, Beatriz. It's always good to receive you back here once again. But yeah, breathe. You finished yours, yeah? Right? Paula did not present her thesis. Wellington will also do a doctorate in a while. But Claudia, talk about you. I will give you the floor. Yeah, I delivered my doctorate thesis last Friday. And I will defend it by the end of the month. Thank you once again, Claudia. And welcome to the Catholic University. Guys, it's great to be here. Well, as I said, I am interior designer, graduated in business administration, and my master's. I share this space with Pamela as well, and I have an experience of work in the City Hall of Niterói with interior design. And my research uses that experience as a case study, interacting with Minha Casa Minha Vida, and how the design inserts itself as a subjectivation object. And then we talk about looking at these hegemonic forces into that consume makes us want and have, and look into what we are in the face of these forces that are a product of capitalism and the system, and that we can develop who we are as identity and try to preserve those identities and trying to encourage and foster valorization of identities. So my research is about that, and we already talked a little bit about that. So today I cut a little bit of that because Aneida asked me to talk about how was the creation of Da Porta para Dentro, which is a case study, and that perspective of how we see in a context of public policy and also serving a more vulnerable population. I ended up introducing this part. I have no time. This is a picture of a gated community of a group of indigenous peoples that fought a lot for the permanence of Lago do Maracanã, and they needed to be relocated due to the World Cup and some reforms, and they were relocated. And a part of them accepted that condition, and they went to this house complex. And they take over this space, and their culture stays, even though there are a lot of forces contrary to what they are. And as I said, this case study is Da Porta para Dentro, which is interior design project of Minha Casa Minha Vida alongside social assistants, a lot of people who are there working, and we try to promote life quality, but also the right of access to cities and dignified housing that includes cultural adequation. So when we talk about rights and housing, and that is in a series of legislations, we're talking about cultural adequation, and that one way or another is being neglected when we look at that picture. And that picture has a lot to do with the creation of that proposal of Da Porta para Dentro. And there we're seeing that it's everything the same. It's all the same. An hegemonic perspective to a diverse problem. So here we have photographs of 50 houses in San Bernardo dos Campos. I know it's little. We cannot see details, but I would like to call the attention to a diversity of colors that are already hard hitting our face, so to say. And then when we see that, and this started in a movement in 2016 with the project Porta para Dentro. It starts in 2021 in practice. And this girl on the left side, she was an academic director of ABD, actually regional director in Rio de Janeiro of the IABT, one of the class associations that people mentioned here today, and it gathered people from all courses of interior design to conduct a project for Sebright in Rio. And we ended up that room and we said, it's pretty cool, all this movement is amazing, but we could do this for people who cannot pay this. We could be doing that. If we continue through contact, we tried to get in touch with Caixa in Niterói, which is the main founder of Minha Casa Minha Vida. And then we developed everything until in 2017 we got to put together a talk for the audience, and it was really well assessed within that set of activities that were being conducted for that audience. And we saw that there was a possibility. So now understanding a little bit more of the problem, when we deliver a standard the legislation and when we assess it, we're seeing that sometimes that house is not being considered a study space or a space of work, and is destined to a 4-member family and in a nuclear structure, that is a couple with kids. And it is still done as something that you cannot modify. You cannot add structures or take structures out. You have to maintain that space without any modifications. And these are people with low income, up to two minimum wages. So you add more economic complexity and financial complexity to deal with all of that. And when we talk about interior design in that process, we're talking about resignify belonging. So we have the deliver of a house, which is that white canvas, so to say, and then family starts dealing with that space and understanding how they are going to solve everything, and then that becomes a place. But it only becomes a home when their family start to belonging and feeling that they are that they are being represented, that they feel nice in that space. These photographs that are also part of the work of Carol Quintanilha, and we see them more closely. We see this diversity here. This was a part of Minha Casa Minha Vida, in which they only painted really lightly on the surface, and the ground was also very flimsy. So the ideal is the ideal part is, to that this is more concrete, and then how we are going to transform this in a place, in a home. How can we insert design in this process? And we had some distances from the audience that we were going to be working with. So we have to listen to them, as we have talked about during the day. So we went to a more technical material, but trying to see how we can convey this technique of interior design in an accessible way. In addition to this office, we saw that we needed to delve into some matters of the office. So we created tools, and I put this in the paper. You can take a look into that later on. So how do we deal with the light difference and everything else? Sometimes people relate white light to something more cheap, but that is not the case. It can affect the health of the eyes and mental health, etc. And based on that, whoever is interested can receive individual service at home. So we have UFRJ, Vega Dalmeida, and Stasio that contributes with that. And we go to each house, we do an active listening of what that family needs, what they are. We listen to stories, and that becomes a very close relationship. And then we deliver the materials that are being shown there in that picture. We realize there is a need as well of generating examples of what we were doing, because it's a little difficult to find on the internet images that represent what you want to talk about, appropriate to the context you want to talk about. So that's more related to luxury, etc. So it was hard to find these examples. And then with that motivation, and also because we wanted to find materials so people can execute, because remember, budget is really low, and family budget is totally dedicated to pay the bills. So we were able to mobilize some materials for donation. And then things start taking off. We need guidance, see how we can execute, how can we see that execution. It's not that people don't know how to do that. No, that's not the case. They do know how to do that. The thing is that we can be a mechanism to aid in this process and make things easier. Then we thought, okay, we need to create more things so the families, and mainly women, feel capable of executing those changes. We looked for UF, that industrial design that's pretty good, and looking into the context that we presented, we built 2 workshops of woodwork and another one of culture They serve some families and they make small furniture and customized objects. Regarding results, we show here that 71% of families executed changes based on this consultancy and all this process, and we have social impact. So we have old ladies that went back to study to complete elementary school. We have people that went back to autonomous work that they developed in their houses, but the complexity of the space had made them stop working. Mental health, there was an improvement in the emotional aspect, and in their fight for a right to access and health. And access to social benefits. And for work as a whole, we saw that people started being more involved in all the activities that are done in the gated communities. And just to close this, we had a recent recognition of ONU Habitat and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. We recognize the project as a good practice of urban development. And here we're talking about urban, but we're talking about houses. So this is an inward movement, actually an outward movement, and create autonomies so these families and people can change their realities. That is it. There is a video. I don't know if you want to play it. It's only a minute long. Could you play the video?
Dona Márcia, como é acordar nesse quarto novo?
Ai, em acordar nesse quarto novo, a gente acorda, no caso eu, linda, quando eu acordo, penso, ai meu Deus, eu não estou aqui, onde que eu estou?
Um lugar novo?
Isso, meu lugar novo, que é minha casa, mas eu acordo e fico pensando, ai meu Deus, onde que eu estou? Até bater na minha cabeça, ai, estou em casa. Estou na minha casa.
E o que foi, será, que fez a mudança nesse espaço?
Ai, foi a organização, foi essa pintura linda que eu nunca ia imaginar na minha vida que ia ter uma pintura dessa. Ai, nunca imaginei. Ai, que coisa linda.
E aí a senhora escolheu as cores do quarto também, né? Combinou com a cor da parede.
Isso. E tudo organizado.
Então tá, muito obrigada. Espero que a senhora aproveite muito esse quarto novo.
Ah, obrigado, gente. Obrigado. As designs, vocês são do outro mundo também, tá? Vocês não são dessa terra não, hein?
Heneda, this meeting was amazing. Marcos, it was amazing. This panel that shows the possibility of research and projects and developing processes based on that professional perspective. Thank you. I wanted to hear a round of applause for the guys interpreting Libras here, also interpreting also the technical team. Also a round of applause. Also the people here from the university, from the auditorium. Really cool, and you especially that stayed up to this moment. Thank you as well. And I'm gonna do what I said just so you can say goodbye, and also if you can give a piece of advice for everyone who's starting right now, because you already did your masters, etc. Well, I think we first have to believe in things and to understand what our goal is. Creativity is synonym with liberty. We cannot be stuck if we need to open up space for freedom. And this activity is really important, even within the processes of study. That is important indeed, because when we analyze all these matters, we need to be creative. Otherwise, we only copy things. So that is it. And I think that's relevant. It's really relevant, actually. Went back to my academic life after a certain age because I went through several graduations until I got here. I think we need to complement knowledge is really important. What we believe of a better future, of having that joy of doing our work, has a lot to do with that. And the straightening of that knowledge. I always thought when I did design at the work, they say, oh, people we take their place, creativity, nobody takes it. It's ours to have. But it has to come from you. The technique is there so everybody can learn it, okay? So thanks a lot for your attention. I hope you also see Carnival as a productive chain that's inserted in design as well, in the usage of recyclable materials, etc. And let's keep fighting so things happen in a better way. Well, guys, it's a pity that we won't get to talk a little bit more. I wanted to ask and answer to some questions, of course. Obviously, I would like to thank you for the opportunity of being here. I would like to leave as a takeaway that you always need to be critical. You'd always need to be aware of what needs to be improved. Also, attitude is really important. But we also know that we live in a complex world and full of restrictions. We are never in that ideal world, so we can never work exactly in what we want because we have limitations. We have material limitations. So that's what I tell you. Never stop being critical with yourself. And always keep that in mind. Especially because oftentimes we have that concern of being present in social spaces, but the concern we have to have of taking care of everything and collecting all those all those information, all that information, all those numbers, that has to be a strategy to so that can be an instrument that serves to gentrification. That should not happen. And that is my perspective, and that is my message for you guys. Once again, thanks a lot. And when you go to Rio, you can give me a call. So thank you. Thank you. I was present today and in the last 2 days. Remember, this is being uploaded to YouTube, so watch it. I consider myself an orphan. I don't anymore. because this movement of design is really cool. So yeah, we need to get involved with everything we believe in, because in the forum we saw so many different design fronts, forms of taking action, and I believe that they come from something that bothers us, but sometimes it comes from within. So we need to try to find ways to improve in spite of the limitations. And I believe that the research was a huge weight on my back. It still is, actually. But there were moments that were really joyful, because sometimes you find researchers that think like you think, and these things continue to flow. So there are tears and laughs. So I believe that is it. Thanks a lot for that movement and for being here today. Yeah, Bia, we talked about creativity. Final words, Bia? It's really hard. There are a lot of young people here, but I am a user of TikTok. I think there was an audio of people saying, look, when you have an idea, just go and record it, because there is no right moment to do anything. You just have to go and take the step forth. So if you have an idea, go there, record it. You don't need to have a professional or anything like that. And I believe that design has a lot to do with that. When you have a concern, you don't have to, if you want to do something, you don't have to wait for the right moment. Oh, when I have a master's, no, just do things. You can start right now. If you have something you want to do, just research and start putting things into practice. I believe that is the takeaway I would give. After everything we've said today, we are in this moment to do things, and yeah, that's it. Thank you for coming as well. Is the famous Just Do It. So once again, guys, thank you. Thank you for your attention, and I hope that this generated an impact in all of you, and especially in your careers and professions. Have a good rest of your day and have a nice lunch. Let's take a picture.
A palavra pode levantar um país ou afundar uma reputação. Pode inflamar uma multidão ou calar uma verdade, mas também pode trazer memórias, sonhos e contar a história. Seja impressa em papel ou formada por pixels, a palavra pode confundir ou pode revelar. Em um mundo com tanto ruído, a palavra certa faz toda a diferença. Acompanhe o Correio também nos meios digitais. Correio Brasiliense. Jornalismo de verdade.
Eu sou o Bruno Tiberi e todas as manhãs você confere aqui o TVC Manhã com as principais informações do trânsito e, claro, tudo aquilo que vai impactar você no seu dia. Então não se esqueça, hein? De segunda a sexta eu espero você.
Eu sou Brenner Vasconcelos e aqui comigo no TVC Esporte você confere todas as atualizações e informações do esporte do Brasil e do mundo. Eu espero você.
Sou a Isis Tainá e apresenta a Agenda Cultural. Aqui você fica por dentro das melhores opções de lazer, música, teatro e diversão para toda a família.